Greetings and salutations from Smiths Grove, Kentucky. We're 70 miles north of Nashville, 120 miles south of Louisville there. And we have some thoughts that we want to share with you. We are Faith Assembly of God, P.O. Box 331, Smiths Grove, Kentucky, 42171. Or you can reach us via the computer, KYFINGERS@AOL.com. That's Kentucky Fingers. That's from playing the guitar. This is where we picked up that label there. And we've been here 33 years, Pastor, in this church. And many of the first crew that when I came here are gone. We probably have two families that's original in 33 years. And we want to share a lesson with you, and we want to sort of get right into it. I have a lot on my heart to share. But I want us to think about pointless living. Pointless living. Will you make today count? Will you make today count? Are we looking for toys or tools? When I taught school 150 years ago, 1974 to 1981, when I taught school, we had report cards every 6 weeks. We never had computers. Be honest, we probably didn't have a calculator. I always, on the report cards, there was English, and there was effort. There was how many days was you here, how many days was you late, how many days did you miss. We call that accountability. And seems like the same people that was always late, and the people that's always on time was always on time. But do you ever, we evaluated, I had one student, I started to say his name, but I better not, that never in 1 year of school, 180 days, he never one time finished one assignment. Brilliant young man, lazy. He was absolutely lazy. He in the office, they sold pencils and erasers, and for a while the eraser that they put on was, you could get them shaped like an airplane or a car or whatever, and this boy was not paying attention or anything, and he took his eraser and it was a car, and he was running it all over his desk like it was a racetrack, driving back and forth. And I said, I almost said his name again. I said, "You stop that right now." And he went, "Eek!" He stopped it there. Spelling 100 possible, he would probably average 40 and maybe 50 every now and then. I just couldn't get this boy motivated. I tried behavior modification. I tried his parents. I tried all kinds of things. I just couldn't get motivated. We are held accountable. The first 6 weeks in spelling, he got a F. And I put on my report cards, again before computers, I wrote out, and I always put F's in red, so that way they couldn't change it on the way home. They couldn't change it. And this young man came to my desk and said, "Mr. Hughes, I don't deserve this F." And I said, "You're right, Carl. You're right. You're absolutely right. I can't give you anything any lower." again, he was brilliant. He was smart. He was a good-looking kid. He was just lazier and all get out. I believe I told him one time, if you could, I believe, back then we called them iron lungs, breathing machines. I said, if you could afford an iron lung, I don't even think you'd put forth your effort to breathe. And I just could not get motivated. I believe that we're walking in the last days, and I believe we have a lot of unmotivated preachers, unaccountable. I can tell you right now, I know several young preachers that don't want to come under any authority. They don't want to complete any studies. They don't want to do anything. And they do not hold themselves accountable to themselves or to anybody else. There's we have a goal in life that discipline, when we're young and immature, discipline comes from others. Your mom says, no, 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 no. And she smacks your hands and she does all this. The goal of life is that we would mature to the point that we don't need anybody else. We don't need a police car with blue lights to pull us over for speeding, because we'll keep that in check ourselves. Do you ever evaluate yourself? How much have you prayed this week? How much have you read your Bible? What have you done to encourage or help somebody? I believe you could text message, you could send a card, you could make a phone call, you could cook a little extra and share it with somebody. I believe that we need to evaluate or hold ourselves accountable for several things. Number one, for the words that you speak. You'll never be any better than the words that you speak. Do you speak negative? Do you feel negative all the time? Not only do we need to evaluate where I stand with my words, we need to evaluate where I stand with my attitudes. What kind of attitudes do I have? Are my attitudes pleasing to God? Are they pleasing to me? Are they pleasing to my family? And then we need to talk about evaluating our attitudes and our actions or deeds. What are we doing? What are we doing? I don't do what I do because I have to do it. I don't do it. I took Linda to therapy Monday. She's not allowed to drive. She's hoping next week that she'll be back allowed to drive. But I took her to therapy, and a huge operation there, and I had my stuff laid out and was working, and this beautiful young couple, 40 to 50, I'd say, someplace in there. The man had had a serious stroke and was having to learn how to walk again and talk again and all those things. And I felt like the Lord wanted me to speak to them, and I didn't want to, and I wasn't going to, and it just become real and more real. They walked out, and I never said anything. They got on the sidewalk. I watched him. It's terrible how slow that he was going. I had this big thing helping him walk, and he couldn't use the one side. And I went outside to say something to him, and I backed out again. I do these 50-cent pieces. I keep them in my pocket. And I thought, Lord, I don't have any in there. And I looked, and I had 2. And so I went and sat in my car for a second. And they was real slow. Finally, he got in the car. And I finally was obedient. And I went over, and I said, listen, I'm a preacher. I pastor. I pastored 44 years, but I just saw, first off, I saw the love that the wife had for her husband, how patient. And I saw his struggle. And I talked to her first, and I told her how I appreciated how she was standing by her man and all of that. I probably didn't want to do that. I didn't know how I'd be received. I didn't know there's so many different beliefs and so easy to offend people. And I laid the coin in her hand in the name of Jesus Christ. And then I did him. He was sitting in the car, didn't have his legs in yet, and I put it in his hands. And I thanked her for her faithfulness and her love. And I talked to him. There's going to be days you feel like quitting. There's going to be days you feel like there's no use. You need to fight. You need to press on. You need to do that. And as I was talking, again, you don't know how you're going to be received. I saw tears running down both of their faces. I saw tears, and I thought, God, I'm right on target. Thank you. But it's easier to sit and do nothing than it is. And, of course, sometimes we are rejected, sometimes those things. I'd like to go, if you would, to Isaiah, the 55th chapter. I'm afraid today, especially in the church, afraid's not the word, I'm concerned today. I see some things happening in the church that I probably am not real fond of. I think we're seeking entertainment. I can double our attendance to any service over what the service regularly is by having food. If we'll have a meal, I guarantee, wouldn't you agree with that, Larry? We will double our attendance and maybe more than double. I do think that fellowship is sharing and partaking that way of together, but I don't understand, and yet I do understand Jesus. They love the free fish and the loaves, but we're looking for entertainment, and we're looking to play games. I could take you to a church that twice a week has game nights. They don't have any prayer meeting nights, but they meet 2 nights a week, and the men go in one room and the ladies in another room, and they all play games. Isaiah 55:11. My thought will simply be, am I making a difference today? What kind of difference am I making today? If you're making a difference, it's probably not accidental. It's probably planned and purposed. Isaiah 55:11. So shall my word be that goeth forth out of my mouth. It shall not return unto me void, but it shall accomplish that which I please, and it shall prosper in the thing whereto I send it. I will read that out of the New Living Translation 2, which means Larry's got more work to do. It says, it is the same with my word. I send it out, and it always produces fruit. It will accomplish all I want it to, and it will prosper everywhere I send it. We said in our last live stream, we talked about God needs a vehicle of truth. God needs your hands. We used to sing this song, Jesus, use me, and lo, Lord, don't refuse me. Surely there's a work that I can do. There's something that if you don't do it, it probably won't get done. There might be some people that go to hell that you could have headed them off and turned them around. Think when you enter that beautiful city and the saved all around you appear. Think when somebody comes up to you and says, it was you who invited me here. We used to sing a song in the church about the blood being on our hands. We don't sing that anymore. But God has a plan and God has a purpose for you. And I want us to think about what we think about. And I want us to, I've lost my place here. I want us to focus on pointless living, doing nothing, demanding toys, not tools. Let's read one other verse, and then I want to try to drive my point home. I want to go to Colossians 1, verse 11. Strengthen with all your might. Strengthened with all your might, according to his glorious power, unto all patience and long-suffering with joyfulness. There's two kinds of sin. There's a sin of commission. That's the things that you do that you know you shouldn't be doing. There is the sin of omission. That's things that you didn't do that you should have done. You should have witnessed more. You should have prayed more. You should have been in Sunday school. I'm amazed. Larry on the other side of the camera is one of the best Sunday school teachers I've ever known, and how he prepares himself and puts the maps on the wall and does all this kinds of stuff. And there's so much covered that will be totally missed. And on the average, again, I'd guess half of the church attendance in the morning will be at Sunday school. We don't think it's important. I've been in the ministry 44 years. I got saved when I was 4 or 5 years old. And a big part of my life and the foundation on which I build on is been faithfulness to Sunday school, to the classes or whatever. It says in the New Living Translation 2, Colossians 1, verse 11, we also pray that you will be strengthened with all his glorious power, so you will have all the endurance and patience you need. May you be filled with joy. Wow. Am I doing what I could be doing? Could I do a little bit more? I brought with me today, I asked Linda if she would gather. You know we have grandkids. I asked her if she would gather. You know what I got in the bag? I got a fire truck. All right. I got a fire truck. I got, let's see, what's his name? I forget his name. I knew it a minute ago. That's the joys of getting old. You remember who he is, Larry? He's got a bubble over his head, Toy Story. I never watched it. But we find Christians today wanting gifts of toys so they can play Christianity. They can play. Buzz Lightyear, is that his name? I think so. And we like big toys. We like remote control toys with motors. We like toys. And I'm always amazed at how young a little baby girl shows mother instincts with the doll. This doll's got batteries in it, and I don't know how to play it or whatever, but it's amazing to me how a little girl can hardly walk, will have a baby and baby it and feed it and take care of it. But we're looking for toys in the church. We want to play. We want to be entertained. We want games. Sometimes the spiritual battles that we're facing, toys are not going to help us at all. We need to strengthen ourselves. We need to quit looking for games to play. We need, she's cute, she's got blue eyes. But at some point in life, we have to shift gears. And I'm going to put my toys aside and tell you that we do have perpetual babyhood in the church today. Perpetual babyhood where we can't go out and witness to the lost or anything. We just can't do that. I'm bashful, I'm timid, I'm too busy, wow. Let me tell you a sad story. I was pastoring a church in my first year of pastoring, and we lived in a housing project. Our rent was low based on our income, and most of the people around us were poor. And this neighbor come over, knocked on my door, and asked would I take him to the junkyard to get a starter for his Chevrolet. And sure enough, I did. We had a good visit. His name was Charles. Had a really good visit. Enjoyed his company, and he did mine. And we made friends. And of the evening, I'd take my guitar and go out and sit down on the curb, and kids would gather around me, and we'd sing "Jesus Loves Me," and we'd sing "The Joy of the Lord Is My Strength." We'd sing all these songs, and the kids would gather around me, and the parents would bring their lawn chairs out. And one day we heard sirens coming in the distance, and they kept getting closer and closer. And I said, "Linda, I believe that's coming here." My neighbor had killed himself, took a .38, shot himself right in the heart. And here, I knew him. He heard me play the gospel songs and those things. But twice I took him someplace. I never one time mentioned Jesus to him. The coroner asked if I'd step in and help get him on the gurney and all of that, and I got his blood all over me. And when I went home, which was just 2 or 3 doors down, when I went home, I immediately took a shower and tried, and I just felt like I couldn't get it off of me. What do we need? We need some tools. Tools are worthless in my hands. I changed my oil. I had a 66 Mustang. I changed my oil, and when I did, I stripped the nut. I had to have a whole new oil pan put on. We need some tools. Now, we got a lot of hammers in the church that goes around knocking everything and complaining. But the same tool that can be used to tear down can be used to build. And I asked Linda to put me a few tools in, and she gave me some clippers there. And the sharper the clippers, the better the work, the less effort you have to do. But she put me some tools in there. If we'll put the tools in the right people's hands, if we will disciple, if we will use discipleship, if we'll do all of that. And here's a tool that we use in the church all the time. We measure everybody. We look around at everybody. It would be very well, my whole point of this lesson is we need to measure ourselves. I'm 6'2", Linda's 5'2", so I see on top of the refrigerator, she don't. When we come to church, oftentimes we look, somebody's eating candy and somebody's picking their nose and somebody's whatever. We don't need to measure other people. We need to measure ourselves. It's not your brain, it's your heart. And there's some more tools in there, screwdriver, vice grips, that kind of stuff. I'm asking that the body of Christ would would start realizing we don't need toys in the church. We need tools in the church. We need tools that's instrumental in bringing life. I have a hero. I don't have a whole lot of heroes in life. Never have. I think we're all sort of on the same level of playing field. But I do have a few heroes. There's a retired pastor named Joe Timberlake that is one of my heroes. His wife is very sick and mentally unaware. He has a handicapped daughter. 2 weeks ago, he preached his son, 53 years old, funeral. That would be the most dreaded thing a preacher could ever do. I preached my dad's funeral. I hope I never have to see my son die, but I had this hero from India. She's not from India. She transplanted there. Her name's Mother Teresa. And I know she's Catholic, but I believe there's some good Catholics out there. And as a young girl, she went to India and found untouchable people that nobody had anything to do with. And she spent her whole life ministering to people that had leprosy, that people that were hungry, people that was all those things. And I saw her as an old, crippled over lady. I saw her approach our president, Mr. Clinton, and she said, "Sir, I don't know how to do it, but if you'll give me all the aborted babies, I promise we'll raise them." That'll be a witness against that leader, and come Judgment Day, I really believe that. We don't want tools, we want toys. We want to cover up our mistakes. But one day I was reading in a magazine where a young reporter had just graduated from college, and he said to Mother Teresa, he said, "You've been at this over 50 years. How does it feel to be a failure?" And sort of stunned Mother Teresa, and she raised up her head and looked at him like she didn't understand what he was saying. And he said, "You started feeding people over 50 years ago, and there's more hungry people today than there was then." She had a phrase that she said, "If you can't feed 100 people, why don't you feed one?" And she answered the young boy this way. She said, "I am but a pencil in the hand of God. God never called me to be successful. God called me to be faithful." She said, "I've been faithful to my post of duty." She raised millions of dollars. She fed thousands and hundreds of thousands of people. She helped dying people that had leprosy and AIDS. She helped them in her arms while they were dying. She did all of that. I know sometime back I used this point, and I'm going to use it again today. I have a pencil. And I'd like to write a story about what I'm going to do for other people this week. But I will tell you, though, if I make a mistake, I do have 2 erasers that when I was a kid, we could never afford these. Rich kids had that kind of erasers. We just had. But you're not going to write much of a story. Can you focus in right here, Larry? We're not going to write much of a story without a point. Pointless. You hear me? Pointless living. I don't know what it is that I'm supposed to do. I don't know. You're not going to write much. If you make a mistake, yeah, you can erase. But we need a sharp point. It's amazing what, if you put it in the right hand, somebody can win the Nobel Peace Prize. Somebody can do artwork that'll be hung in a museum. Or we can do nothing. Or we can do little. Or we can minister to us four and no more. Mother Teresa, Proverbs 27:17 says, Proverbs 27:17, iron sharpens iron, so a man sharpens the countenance of his friend. Yes, I've ministered to people, been appreciated, been applauded, been all of those things. I remember one time picking and got a standing ovation in La Follette, Tennessee, at La Follette High School. I remember that. But that's not, we're called to love hard, to love people. And it is in those trials that God perfects us and does us. Mother Teresa, let me tell you a couple of things she said. Every time you smile at someone, you're giving a gift to others. A smile improves your face value. I asked us to smile at church the other night, and I heard 6 faces crack. I don't know if it's the makeup or their face crack. It takes less muscles to smile than it does to frown. Mother Teresa said, peace begins with a smile. She said, spread love every place you go. If you can't feed 100 people, why don't you feed one? You enter this life to be a blessing or a lesson. I want to be a blessing. I want to do something, or at least I want to try doing something, and if I fail doing that. If you want to learn love, Mother Teresa said, there's something you're going to have to learn to do. You're going to have to learn to forgive. You can't continue loving if you don't know how to forgive. She said, if you judge people, you will have no time to love them. She said, if you want to change the world, be faithful to your post of duty. Love your family and be an agent of change. And her line that I really love is, God did not call me to be successful. God called me to be faithful. If we wanted the point of Noah's life, he did not average one person saved per decade of his ministry. 8 people on the ark, and honestly 7 besides himself, and then his wife and 3 sons, so he got 2 daughter-in-laws in there. But we are focusing on our destination, not on our journey. We don't have a point. We're aimless. We get in the car, we fill it up with gas, we change the oil, we do all of that, and then we say, I don't know where I'm going. It's really neat nowadays. We just take our phones and pop it in, and it'll tell us how to get there. I will also tell you that every gardener knows there's a time. I'm left-handed, but I'm not going to do this left-handed. There's a time to cut that rose. There's a time to pick those beans. There's a time to pick those tomatoes. There's a time to do that. Any person with a rose garden and they grow all these beautiful roses knows that they'll go and cut that flower and put it in a vase with some baby's breath and stuff and take it and give it to a friend or take it to a funeral home or whatever. The master has the right to reap the harvest when he wants to. Ephesians 5 verse 15 says, I look at the clock and it's jumped an hour, and wow. Well, we did change times this week, didn't we? But we went backward. Only God can unfold a rose. If I had a rose, I've done it many times at a funeral, and I'd say, who's the smartest person in here? Unfold this rose. You can't unfold a rose. You'll break it and tear it up while you're doing it. God unfolds a rose. Ephesians 5 verse 15. See then that ye walk circumspectly, not as fools, but as wise. There's one way to tell the difference in a fool and a wise person. Listen to him. Listen to him. I want us to look at verse 16. Redeeming the time because the days are evil. God has a plan for you. There's nothing wrong with having some toys and playing games and that kind of thing. But are we doing a work? We're living in perilous times. And as a whole, a church, we're not getting very many people saved. We're not even getting them into church. We have choices to make. And the choice, whether it be of a tool or a toy, that's your choice. But let me tell you something. This is not an entertaining message, is it? Let me tell you something. There's consequences of choices. It's you may not see today whether you've been playing with toys or tools. It might show up a year from today or 2 years from today. We need to be busy about our Father's business. And I believe Isaiah 26 says this, I will keep in perfect peace whose mind is stayed on thee because he trusted in thee. I was going through a crisis time in my life. Probably one of the darkest, heaviest times I'd ever seen. I didn't know what to do. And one night I got up and I went to the fireplace and I laid the Living Bible down in front of the fireplace, and I couldn't read anything on the book. I couldn't read anything except this one line. And somehow, maybe I'm dyslexic, I saw it backwards. Trust in thee, stay your mind, perfect peace. Is perfect peace available? I'd say so. But we're going to have to quit playing with toys and getting our tools, sharpen our tools. Proverbs says that a sharpened axe requires less work. We must know that God's intention and design for us is not just to land in heaven, but to do work between here and there, to apply ourselves. I'm told that the average person never reads one book after they graduate from high school. One book would be the Bible. Wow. They don't read one book. Leaders are readers. Readers are leaders. Are you learning or are you staying the same? You got the same toys? And are you looking for entertainment? Somehow we need to get to the point. We need to get to the point of knowing that I have a duty and a responsibility to the Lord. That I can make corrections. Let me tell you something about teaching school 6 years. Smart students check their work. If you have 10 math problems, when you're done, a smart student will go back and check their work. usually they're right. But every now and then they'll be wrong, so they'll take their eraser and they'll erase it and they'll correct it. Slower students, you can't hardly make them. You can't hardly make them check their work or correct their work. We find so many people in the church today that are not correctable. If the preacher preaches a truth of something they need to change and adapt, if he does that, they're not correctable. Am I? Not talking about you. Am I correctable? Am I correctable? For something to become a masterpiece, a piece of wood, it has to be sanded, and it has coarse sand and paper and has all of those things. We have to realize there's some duplication there. Mr. Larry, sorry about that. But we have to know, I'm going to blame the computer for that. We have to know Proverbs 27:19. We've gone down quite a lot. As in water, face answered to face, so the heart of a man to a man. I pastored in the mountains. There was a trailer behind the church, and I was going to the church to pray and go into my office, and I noticed this little girl in great fear. I mean, terrible fear, crying out, screaming fear. And I asked her what was wrong, and she said, there's a demon in that mud puddle. It had just rained real hard in mud puddles, and she'd look over in that mud puddle and see that demon, and she would run away and scream and holler. She was afraid that demon was going to get her. And I explained to her. I walked up and I leaned over the puddle and showed her my reflection in the water. And I had her do that. And she wouldn't accept what I said. The mom come out and talked. And I told her that this precious little girl was so afraid that demons was going to get her and devils going to get her. And I told her if she'd give herself to Jesus, she wouldn't have to worry about that. And the mom said, well, at our church, we've been in a 6-week study on demonology. We're studying demons. And that bred fear in both of their hearts. Honey, I study the cross. I want to write my story on purpose with the point that I will glory in the cross, that Jesus Christ willingly gave himself. Luke 6:45, a good man out of the good treasures of his heart brings forth good fruit. An evil man out of the evil treasures of his heart brings forth that which is evil. For out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. I don't have to be around you very long to know a little bit about you if you'll speak, if you'll talk. Don't show me what you do with your money. Yeah, that'll tell me a whole lot about you. But show me what you do with your time. What are you writing on your timeline? Did you know, no matter how dark and cold the day is, it's not always going to stay that way. Time is a limited gift from God to you. Some people die young, some die old. There's a country music song that says, I'm too old to die young. But are you using today wisely? Could you do something for somebody? Or are you going to sit in front of the television set all the time? Hopefully you'll sit in front of this and see it. But no matter how dark and cold it is, God has a plan that a new day is coming. A new day, a new hope. December the 21st is the shortest day of the year. My birthday's the 19th. The 21st is the shortest day of the year. On that day, the sun will set at 5:02. By the end of the February, the sun will not set till after 6 p.m. An hour's different. Just hang on. That dark day, that dark time, just do your best and forget the rest. Just do it. In February, every day is 3 days. February the 1st, February the 2nd is 3 minutes longer than the first was. Every day of February, each day grows longer by 3 days. I'm trying to get us to consider, what opportunities do you have today to do something? Larry took the time to meet me here this morning and record this, and he's going to go home when we're done. My work's before, his work's after, and he puts the verses on it. He voluntarily done that. And there's been a time or two probably that I didn't know. And I would probably say Larry probably didn't feel like it today. When we got home yesterday, Linda said, "Did you notice Larry wasn't feeling good?" And I said, "I didn't notice that, Linda." So I wrote and said, "Larry, you don't have to do in the morning." And I don't remember exactly how he wrote, but he wrote back. It's something that he had to do. There's a preacher someplace, there's a kid someplace, there's an old person. In our society, old people get very raw deals. I used to think once you got 70, it was home free, it was all downhill. It's not that way. It's not that way. You are painting something today, and what you spend your time doing. I have 2 sons. The day that they went to kindergarten, I presented both of them a New Testament that I'd written on every page on. It took me several years to do that, to do the 2 of them. I have 6 grandchildren, 5 grandsons, 1 granddaughter. The day that we found out they was pregnant, I went and bought a Bible and a ukulele. And for 9 months, I disciplined myself, and I wrote on every page. I drew pictures for them. I'm not adding to the Bible. I just want to give incentive to them to read the Bible. And I gave it to them the day they were born. And then at church, the first time they came to church, we laid that Bible. I just saw where my dad was here when we was doing it to one of my grandsons, and Dad held the Bible and prayed over it and presented it to what would be his great-grandchild. I have 1 great-grandchild, Presley. She's what, Larry, 2, would you say? I can't keep up with things. But we presented to her the day she was born her own Bible that I'd written on every page. And I told my sons, the torch probably should go into your hands, and if you carry this tradition on, it'll be up to you. I don't know that I have the time for that, but you're writing something. I believe Larry keeps notes, and you put them in the notebook or something, Larry, or you just how do you keep them? Yeah, that's the same way I looked at a stack of sermons this morning. This probably 4 foot tall of my sermons. Someday somebody's going to get my sermons. SermonCentral.com. I average touching, you wouldn't believe how many I touched through that. All because I disciplined myself to put it on the computer. And I hear on a whole over 90 countries a week, up to 101 countries a week do my material. All because I discipline myself. God speaking to you today, Dad, discipline yourselves. Moms, we used to sing this song in the church, if I could hear my mother pray again, if I could hear her tender voices then. I'm sad to tell you today that many of our kids have never heard their mother pray unless it's some kind of an emergency, a spare tire prayer. You just get it out when you got a flat. We started quarter till, and then I think we started again. So, but my time is come and gone. But let me tell you something. The only difference between a good day and a bad day is your attitude. What you're doing. You do nothing, you're probably going to have a bad day. Satisfaction in living comes when we do the best that we can. I'm a proponent that I don't believe we can ever do our best, because once we do it, we'll learn something. We can do it better and better and better. And we call it gooder here in Kentucky. We need to know that God needs your hands. He needs your hands. He needs your skills. Some have computer skills. Some have cooking. I've got a bunch of chocolate-covered peanuts at my house. Did you get some, Larry? They brought them all to me. Somebody in church made some chocolate-covered peanuts, and man, they're so good. It makes your lips smack your head. Some have a way with words. Some have a way with intercession. They'll pray for people, and those people may never know they prayed for them. I asked you to consider putting down your toys. Quit praying for games. And let's get about our Father's business. They lost Jesus, probably the most sincere prayer ever prayed in the history of the Bible. Mary thought Jesus was with Joseph, and Joseph thought it was with Mary, and when they finally got together, they found out they had lost Jesus. And can you imagine the prayer that night when Mary and Joseph got on their knees and said, God, we're really sorry, and we're going to do our best, but we've lost your son. We've lost him. And they found him. Where did they find him? In the church. And he said to him, didn't you know I had to be about my Father's business? There's nothing wrong with watching television and that kind of thing. But we need a balance. Will you do more than you have been doing? Will you sharpen the point on your pencil? And occasionally it's going to break. My grandfather Sumner always carried a little short. I never had a long pencil. He had a little short pencil behind his ear all the time. I think we need to be writing a story that influences other lives. We thank you, Mr. Larry Carter and Dee Carter, for all that you do and all that you help me in. And we thank everybody that has listened to this. You know what I'm going to ask you to do. The first thing I'm going to ask you to do, our hands are so little and our reach, Smiths Grove, I think 600 people. We don't have a red light or green light in town. We do have outside of town, we have some blinking lights. We're little. Unless you help us and pass this on to other people. It's not your responsibility if they watch it or not. It's just, can you help me pass it on to others? And the main thrust of everything we do, the main thrust of my life, is that I get people to have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ, that they acknowledge their sins, that they confess their sins, and that they change their way. If you don't know Jesus, you know my life. Before the sun goes down tonight, would you accept Jesus Christ as your Savior? Would you live for him? And would you get in a little church? There's a preacher standing at a glass door. This morning when I finished my prayer, I come to church and pray. I went and stood at the glass doors and just looked out and watched all the cars go by. Our hands are so little. But if you don't know Jesus, you're doomed for hell. And I do believe that there is a real hell. There's a real heaven. And you'll decide whether you go. And you can take other people with you by sharing your testimony. May God richly bless you. And my dad always closed his prayers by saying, help us live with eternity's values and views, for there's too much to gain to lose. Will you lay down that toy and pick up a tool in Jesus' name?